involves condemnation actions and other actions along the entire 39-plus mile route. It traverses a number of fault zones, and they have to be passed at grade, traversed at grade, including Soledad, Santa Susana, San Fernando, Mission Hills, Whitney. It presents substantial adverse impacts to Acton, agua dulce, Santa Cruz Valley, Silmar, Mission San Fernando, so on. And the high-speed train will not be stopping in many of those communities where all these impacts are occurring. So, now last fall, Supervisor Antonovich recommended an alternative routing that avoids communities where high-speed rail will not be stopped. Includes Acton. We recognize, as a community recognizes, that there are a number of benefits for this direct route. It does not require much more tunneling than what they're already proposing to do. It reduces the trip length by up to 15 miles. It avoids condemnation action and other legal actions in portions of Acton, agua dulce, Santa Clarita. It avoids several faults, including the Soledad, Santa Susana, Mission Hills, and Pique faults. So we get, as a community, why Supervisor Antonovich recommended this, and we get what the high-speed rail is looking at. However, this map just came out, at least became known to our community 2 days ago. This is high-speed rail's map of their proposed study area for this direct route. And it's problematic for this community because I've mapped it in more detail on some of the maps in the back where you can actually see where your home is. It affects the entire eastern portion of Acton, and it also affects the southern portion of Acton. So it doesn't really avoid our community to the extent that we understand Supervisor Antonovich's vision does. So, hold on a second. We as a community are expecting that the high-speed rail will develop a direct route that is consistent with Supervisor Antonovich's vision and will avoid impacts to Acton's residents. The way this is done is a route that avoids Acton's developed areas and also avoids above-ground impacts to Acton's open space areas. And I'll clarify what that means in the next slide. Now this slide shows the area of eastern and southern Acton's residential zones. We're looking for a route that will avoid Acton's residential areas, including the Angeles Forest and Peaceful Valley area, the Aliso Canyon area, and there's actually two parts to that, and also the Ravenna, Bootlegger, or Rostre area. Now, the red line represents the Acton community boundary. Acton is a historic community. It occupies about 100 square miles in size. It has legally established boundaries that are recognized by the county. And we understand that what Supervisor Antonovich is looking for is a route that minimizes or does not affect our community any more than any other community, such as Santa Clarita Valley, agua dulce, and those areas that are avoided by this route. The key to this is making sure that the route enters the forest where there are no residents as soon as possible and remains underground and does not go under any homes in our community. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we understand Supervisor Antonovich is looking for. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Well, let's move on to the next slide. So hard for you to see. I apologize. Now, what I've shown here on the top map is, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a yellow line showing the general area where there's a ridge line that's substantially higher than the elevation at which the train comes out of its right-of-way, right near Lake Palmdale. Okay? So, in order to enter the forest, you would need to begin its underground route there at that point, and then exit the southern part of the boundary. The lower picture is the southern part of the boundary of the Ayers National Forest, basically where the hill ends. And the distance between those 2 points exactly is 19.5 miles, which is less than what they're already looking at tunneling in the other 2 routes that they've already put down on the map. The advantages of this is that it would avoid, for example, the Pacific Crest Trail, all existing and proposed wildernesses, including the Magic Mountain Wilderness, which is If any of you looked at the red dot maps, which is what community was given in May, there's a large new, it's about 100 square miles or larger, wilderness area due west of that red dot. It was established by Congress in 2009, and so it's not actually even on a lot of Forest Service maps. And so, and there are also new proposed wildernesses that are coming into play, coming online at EIR for them, just finished a few months ago. So, the route that we're talking about here, which is the forest entirely, and not within Acton's residential communities, residential areas at all, traverses an already heavily impacted area of the Angeles Forest, where the Southern California Signal 11 is, lots of utility corridors, lots of access roads. So it fits with the forest management plan as well. It also avoids the Pacific Crest Trail, and it avoids a number of the faults, and it passes the San Fernando Fault of grade. And not very deep below ground, and it will have substantial impacts in the Peaceful Valley and northeast Santiago neighborhoods, the North Wisconsin neighborhoods. These are all places where it's above ground, fairly shallow. And then it goes below ground, Then it goes above ground, and of course goes right near the high school and the junior high, which we're all aware of. And then it goes back below ground, affects North Hubbard Road, Heisey Ranch Road. So obviously there's going to be well impacts, and this community is very concerned with well impact issues. And there will be condemnation, value loss, and unmitigable school impacts from the above sections. Then we have the other route that has already been lined out, and that is the State Route 14 kind of route. And that will cause well impacts in the Peaceful Valley area, in the Northeast Santiago area where they're all on wells, Acton Canyon neighborhood where they're all on wells, Red Rover, Northwest Crown Valley neighborhood where they're all on wells, Heisey Ranch, and North Hubbard Road neighborhood. So this sort of gives you an overview of what it is we're looking at, and the community of Acton has spent the last couple of weeks trying to gather up community questions for the high-speed rail on these two routes, as well as the proposed route, or the proposed study area that we've got. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Pam.
I think it's going to Mike. Mike's going to make an effort.
There will be a committee planning meeting next week to kind of go over the scoping information of where we go next, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. What we want to do now is go ahead and have the high-speed rail representative do their presentation. We have the community questions that we've gathered. Pam and a couple other people will be going over there to make notes to see if all the questions are answered. If so, we'll probably still reiterate those answers and questions, and Pam will go over that after the high-speed rail presentation. After we go over the questions, then we'll have time for questions from the audience, which again I will moderate.
While they're bringing up our PowerPoint, I wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight. As you go through the development of a large project like this, it can be difficult, and the only way that we can do the best job that we can do is by getting communities out and getting their feedback. That is very, very important. That is why we have released scoping notices last week. That is why we will be hosting scoping meetings again for this section. This section had scoping meetings back in 2007. That was a long time ago. And there's probably new folks that live in your community that didn't live in the community since then. There are probably comments that were received at that time in 2007 that aren't relevant anymore to your community. So the authority is going out. We are releasing scoping. We're essentially putting the project back into the place where we are soliciting the feedback of the communities as we develop the alignments for the high-speed rail. I think that there has been good progress, perhaps baby steps, but I do think that there has been good progress and good discussions all up and down the Santa Clara River Valley area Santa Clarita, Agua Dulce, Acton. We've had discussions. We understand that you value your community and the character of your community right now. And as we move forward, all of your comments are important for us. So what I want to give you today is I want to give you the same presentation that was prepared to give to local communities in advance of those scoping meetings happening. Those scoping meetings are part of the official EIR-EIS record. They are put together in order to solicit and write down and collect that feedback and keep it for the legal record in terms of advancing the project. We will be holding 7 scoping meetings starting August 5th. There will be a scoping meeting in the Acton Library on August 11th, where a whole group of people from the High-Speed Rail Authority will be there, including people who can take down all of your input that may not be received tonight to put that into the record. We are hosting a meeting here. We are hosting a meeting in Palmdale. We're hosting a meeting in Burbank, in Sylmar, at LA Union Station, at Burbank, in Santa Clarita. We're going out and we're blanketing the communities. I appreciate some of the comments we received during our recent community meetings about the importance of making sure that that outreach is done. So we will be here with a meeting, same meeting for your community. All right, so I am Michelle Boehm. I am the Southern California Regional Director for the High-Speed Rail Authority. I've been working on the project for about 2 years now. There was a large change in the staff at the High-Speed Rail Authority about 2 years ago, and I believe that that has been positive. It has allowed the High-Speed Rail Authority to move forward in a more positive and productive way. Again, I know that everybody here does not agree with the high-speed train, nor do you agree, right, with all of the things I'm going to say tonight. But I very much respect what you have to say, and we very much want your input. You can see it's going from San Francisco in the north, the Phase 1 system, to Anaheim in the south. The Phase 2 links are shown in orange. It's Merced to Sacramento, and it's LA to San Diego out through the Inland Empire. This is 800 miles of new rail infrastructure for the state of California. The idea is to connect the major cities in the state together with a fast, efficient, and low emissions form of transportation to provide an option, not the only answer to our transportation problems. What we are working on right now is connecting Southern and Northern California. We have construction underway, a construction contract underway in the Central Valley. That work has begun. They are drilling test piles up there. They are doing a whole variety of geotechnical investigations in that location right now. That is an important component of our project. That area, the Central Valley area, the construction component of the project is shown in the greenish. In the orange, we're showing the Caltrain corridor, the peninsula. Up there, we are working with the local rail providers to electrify the alignment into San Francisco. And that activity is underway. Down here in Southern California in the purple, we are working on the planning and environmental clearance for the sections down here, including the Palmdale to Burbank section. And we're also working with local rail providers to look at ways that we can improve the existing passenger rail system. Most germane to this area would be the Metrolink system. There are a number of projects that we are working on with LA Metro. Yes?
Whoever owns the silver Honda and silver Mercedes in the parking lot is blocking the fire lanes. They've got to be moved immediately. I got a car behind me ready to tow. Thank you.
We are working with Metrolink in order to improve that service. That includes some double track projects in the north end of the San Fernando Valley that would improve the frequency of the trains as well as the on-time performance of the trains. It's close to 10 miles of double track, allowing two trains to go by each other instead of wait at either end. There are projects underway right now for some improvements at the Vincent grade station. There's work going on in Palmdale. There are grade separations in the San Fernando Valley in order to make sure that the existing passenger rail system is as efficient as possible. I mentioned this, work is underway in the Central Valley. We do have construction package number 1 is awarded to a Tudor Perini Zachary Parsons joint venture. Tudor Perini, of course, and Parsons are both local Southern California firms. So that contract was awarded to folks with California addresses who are hiring California people to do the work. We are also partnering with LA Metro to do some other projects that will improve overall the passenger rail on-time performance of the system here in Southern California, including upgrades at LA Union Station. All of your Metrolink trains go through Union Station. So even though it seems like it's far away, if your train has to go through Union Station and it's a dead-end station and it takes your train a long time to get in and out of LA Union Station, it's adding time to when it can get back up here to run another train. Of course, when you're doing a multi-billion-dollar project, there are jobs associated with that project. The authority has established a 30% small business goal for all of our contracting. We're currently well on target to achieve that. As an example, when you award a large construction contract, a lot of companies with a lot of people in California are employed. And here are some numbers of some of the folks that are working right now on that first construction contract. We've got 71 firms with offices in California that are working on that contract. 45 of them are certified small, disadvantaged, or disabled veteran business entities. And 47 of them are located close to the construction site. Over the course of the build-out of the high-speed rail project, the project from San Francisco all the way down to Anaheim, it's estimated that it will create over 60,000 jobs a year for the next 15 years. This was the map that was shown earlier by Jacki. This was the alignment map that was discussed at our June 2014 board meeting, showing the SR14 alignments coming in from the Palmdale Transportation Center with 2 options through the Acton and Agua Dulce communities, down through Santa Clarita, and then around and into the San Fernando Valley and into LA Union Station. We had 5 community meetings where we solicited feedback from the community on these alignments. There were a few refinements up and down the alignment that were made as a result of those meetings, and also as a result of those meetings, we're basically here tonight and we have entered that scoping process again. Because of the feedback in terms of looking at potentially a new corridor, and also because of the complexity of what we're doing here and the interest in looking at the corridor in 2 pieces, sections. We're looking at a section that goes from Palmdale to Burbank. It's about 45 miles. It's got a Palmdale station in the north and a Burbank station in the south. We then are looking at a Burbank to LA Union Station section. It's about 15 miles. Of course, starting again at that Burbank Bob Hope Airport Station location and going into LA Union Station. And as a result, as was mentioned, organizations. We are also looking at a new corridor to find a potential route within this new corridor that could also be studied as part of the EIS process for the high-speed rail project. And these are the alignments, these are the ideas, these are the concepts that the scoping process has been set up to receive feedback on. Right now, that's the most important thing. What is your feedback? Where are your issues? Where are your conflicts with these locations? That's the type of information that we're getting right now, so that when we find a corridor in this area, that corridor is the best, least impactful corridor that we can design. So, there are stations associated with this particular project, as I've mentioned. At the Palmdale Transportation Center, there is connectivity with the existing Metrolink system. There is planned connectivity with the High Desert Corridor, which would ultimately provide a high-speed link to Las Vegas. So this is potentially interstate high-speed rail, not just California high-speed rail.
Michelle, can I ask a question real quick?
No. Questions are later.
No.
questions
Later.
now.
Questions at the
Write your
end.
question down,
Write it
we can
down.
ask it at the end.
I'm very sorry, but everybody will want to ask a question. We got to keep going.
Okay,
Write it down. You can do it at the end.
Burbank. The Burbank station is adjacent to the Bob Hope Airport. It is also closely connected to a Metrolink station to provide easy transfer between a Metrolink system and a high-speed system, as well as easy access to the airport from that particular location. And finally, the LA Union Station. That is literally the hub of all of our passenger rail services here in Southern California. Any train coming from San Diego, any train coming from San Luis Obispo, trains coming out of Santa Clarita, trains coming out of San Bernardino, trains coming out of Riverside, they all go through LA Union Station, and that's why the upgrades that are planned there are so important. So, what are we doing now? As I said, we've released the scoping notices. We will be having scoping meetings across the alignment. There is a scoping meeting on August 11th at the Acton Agua Dulce Library. I will give you the address, but I trust you all may know where it is, but I'll provide it at the end. We have put notices in the papers and publications shown here. We have sent out close to 100,000 flyers to residents and businesses to inform them of these upcoming meetings in order to solicit and get the feedback. In terms of a timeline of planned activities, in the summer, where we're at right now, again, we've established 2 independent sections. We've established that we will study an alternative corridor. We will be continuing to do community updates, have technical meetings, and we will conduct the scoping meetings starting August 5th. In the fall, we will update our board with the release of a draft document. There is another public process associated with the release of just the draft of this document to solicit, again, feedback from the communities. Here is what we've looked at. Here are the impacts we've identified. Do you know of any impacts that we have not identified that we should be considering in this document? That information is then taken back, and we create and establish and finish what we call the final EIS, which is then, again, taken out to public meetings where feedback is solicited. There is an open public comment period for that final document. Those comments are taken in, they are cataloged, they are answered, and then at that point, that document is to be a final environmental document. All through that process, there are areas, there are times, there are periods of that process for community input. You can always give your input on the authority website. You can come to a board meeting and provide your input. You can come down, you can call me, and I can come up here and you can provide your input. You can come down and visit me at the Metropolitan Water District building. That's where my office is. I am located full-time in Southern California to make sure that we've got opportunities to receive the public input. For a project of this magnitude, that is critical. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
The first thing that we want to talk about is the red dot, which was presented to us at one of your previous meetings recently. We've been told by the Santa Clarita Council that the red dot is off the map. Can you clarify where that information and what?
Well, I can't speak to your conversation with the Santa Clarita Council.
Okay.
What I can say is that that was an earnest, early effort on the part of my engineers to come out and work with your community to take a look at places that the high-speed rail might, an alternative corridor might be appropriately placed for your community.
Is the red dot still on the map as a point for you to meet?
The red dot is not on the map. The slug is on the map.
Slug?
That's what I call it, the yellow block. That
Dot is
and
not
so
on.
this right, I call it the slug, the yellow
Yeah, I get it.
study corridor area that I showed up on a big map, and I don't know if you can get it back, but we're looking at this area to determine the best line or lines. It may not be a study of a single line, to study through that yellow study area.
Where is that yellow?
Just one sec, just one sec. I'll get
I'm
it.
not kidding.
I'll get it. Right there.
There we go.
There it is. Palmdale is right up here. Burbank is right down here. The forest is here. Right? Acton is here. As I took notes while you were giving your presentation, you have different community areas.
We can share that.
Right.
Okay. How will you avoid destroying hundreds of active homes either through well destruction or making residential areas unlivable?
That's what we're trying to do right now. That's what the community process, in order to solicit those areas of impact, is about. It's trying to find, right, the best line, essentially, within this yellow area, to study. It is a large project. There is unlikely to be zero impact. I'll be honest with you. But we will look to have the most minimum impact that we can absolutely have.
And
That
what-
is to my benefit,
Right.
right? As a business, it's to my benefit not to impact you as little as I possibly can.
And that is why you're here, is to gather input from us, and hopefully you and the board will listen to the input and either mitigate situations or develop alternative routes.
Correct.
Next, how is this in any way consistent with Supervisor Antonovich's request for the High-Speed Rail Authority to consider the direct route?
Implicit in that question is Supervisor Antonovich's vision. We understand.
You gotta stand up, Jacki, so people can hear you.
Implicit in that question, because we got this a lot, this question came in, I synthesized it as best I could. We understand Supervisor Antonovich's vision is to not impact communities, to go to the forest. So when you have a slug, a swath, a gigantic red dot, basically, how is that consistent with Supervisor Antonovich's vision, since it substantially affects most of Acton?
Obviously, they're important with the community requirements, which are also equally important with, believe it or not, the resource agency requirements, which are also equally important. And right now, what we're looking at is trying to go in as straight a line as we can, because the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So we would like to shorten the route to the extent that we possibly can. What we're here tonight to do, and what we will be back on August 11th to do, is to understand from you how straight that line can be.
Mountain Wilderness that was designated by Congress in 2009, located immediately west of the red dot? Or, in the alternative, do you really expect Congress to grant High-Speed Rail's authority request to negate the wilderness status of this area?
We have convened a federal family workshop where we are talking with the federal resource agencies that oversee both the Forest Service, both the forest and other concerns, the Army Corps, etc. And so we are working through. We are showing them this same map, and we are talking to them about what types of alignments would be appropriate and soliciting their feedback as well.
So when did that information start? Because the last time I asked you if you had contacted the Angeles Forest, the Department of the Interior, that hadn't been done 5 weeks ago.
Correct. We began discussions with them not long after we went to our board meeting in June.
Okay.
After the last round of public meetings, so we have begun discussions. Our partner agency, the Federal Railroad Authority, the FRA, has been in contact with them and is talking to them from Washington to Washington in order to begin these discussions and begin walking through this process.
So
a
it's
long
recent.
process.
It's
Yes.
recent.
Yes, it is recent.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
I
As long as you come up here so that people can hear you.
question
Jacki.
about not only the Magic Mountain wilderness, but the proposed wilderness areas going through the review plan right now, is that the Forest Service actually doesn't have anything to say about that. That is entirely congressional in nature. So the FRA has no impact or no jurisdiction. Department of the Interior has no jurisdiction. Forest Service. So it takes an act of Congress to allow you to do that. And so that's why we're concerned how you plan to get Congress to basically undo what they did in 2009. And also to undo what they're proposing to do with the new proposed ordinances.
We go out, as part of this project, we are contacting all of the agencies and all of the organizations that have property that may be impacted by the high-speed rail. We obtain that information, we talk with them, and we walk through the process. It's really not different than what we're doing here. The agencies are a stakeholder, just like all of the folks here in the community are.
We mitigate well impacts such as production decreases or loss of all water.
So this is an issue that we are facing right now in the Central Valley. Essentially, if your well is impacted, you get a new well.
I don't think anybody sitting here believes you, obviously. And the question is, where is that as a legal document that would prove to us that we will not lose our water?
That is part of the environmental process. That is
The
part of
EIR.
the documentation of the impacts of the project. And part of that documentation, so the very first thing that we do is we try to avoid all impacts. At the point that we can't avoid an impact anymore, then we document what that impact is. And we determine what the mitigation measure for that impact would be.
But you're telling me that's already been documented in the Central Valley.
For their case in their EIR.
Where can we read about that?
That EIR is on our website.
Available.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a situation in Los Angeles County that is perhaps unique in the entire country, in that we have certain well standards that have been imposed that are quite high, 3 gallons per minute for 72 hours. That's a lot of water. And if you don't meet that standard, you don't get your well certified. If you don't get your well certified, you don't get to use it. So if you get 2.9 gallons per hour for 72 hours, so it isn't just in this community a matter of digging a new well. And for us, in a lot of places, some of us have very good wells. I mean, I don't know, I don't have a well, but I understand there are some that are 30, 40 gallons per minute, okay? So we would need to at least establish a baseline for everybody before you would think. So that is one of the things, one of the questions that was asked, how do you establish a baseline? And then how are you going to address county standards, which Norm, in a meeting with high-speed rail engineers in 2010, made it very clear that you just will not be able to assume that we can just get a new well, not here, and allow us to use it, because the county will not certify it. So,
Okay, that was
Excellent information.
basically
Now,
question number.
If I may, if we cannot have a new well established in these county standards, another mitigation factor that we would seek, I would assume, or that you would provide, is hook up to local water at no cost.
Correct. Correct. So that was one of the things that were discussed during some of the previous discussions on the other alignments, the SR14 alignment. I know that the engineers at that time did come out and they talked about hooking people up and putting them on regular service. I know that some people weren't fond of that idea. I know that some people like the fact, you know, I mean, there is everybody here probably chose, I'm assuming, to live here for the community and the atmosphere that you have here. And in some cases, that includes the independence of having your own well. And so there were folks who were interested in that option, and that is certainly an option, right? But there were folks that were very, 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 very happy with being independent and having their own well. And so those are the types of things and complexity. It's not an easy answer.
And those are the kind of things that you have addressed up in Central California.
Yes.
And taking the individual's needs and desires and impact into consideration.
Yes, that's what they're working with them right now to do. And again, I'll let you know.
wait, so you haven't hooked anyone up to county water yet or drilled new wells? That's just the plan for these areas?
We haven't cut them off from their current well.
But the construction isn't started, so you haven't cut them off yet. So we still don't have an answer in my mind, but maybe I missed something here. But I guess Jackie stated this pretty well. I'll read it again. How will the High-Speed Rail Authority establish a baseline for determining well impacts for alignments that traverse Acton's residential areas underground? Because when you're going underground, you're taking our wells.
And those two alignments to the north are very shallow. We have some wells that are over 900 feet deep and deeper.
Yes. And this is all the information.
So the question is, how do you evaluate a baseline? Do you study the wells beforehand, establish what their output is, and then determine what the impact
We do baseline studies.
But then that costs us to do a baseline study on our well. And as Jackie said, the county's requirements are 3 gallons per minute in a 72-hour period. That's a huge amount of water that we're losing out of our area. So I understand you're an engineer. I'd like you to understand what we're talking about as far as our water loss.
Yeah, if you do the study the way the county has it laid out, you may impact that well permanently right then, just doing the initial study. So it's a real critical situation.
Maybe one Carlos.
For all of our environmental studies, whether there be noise impacts, water impacts, traffic impacts, we do baseline studies to establish what is existing level of, what is existing level of biology in the area. We do species,
talk about water.
We count species, that sort of thing. What's the existing traffic level? So we do a baseline study, and then we layer on top of that the impacts of the project. So this would be a similar thing for any water impacts. So we establish what's the baseline, and then what's the impact.
Juan Carlos, will there be individual studies on each well?
I'm not that familiar with the well. I mean, generally speaking, that's the process. I'm not that familiar with the
That would be a good question to
That
take
would
back
be a good
and provide us
question.
an answer for.
Yes, I will contact my Central Valley counterpart, and I will talk with her about the process that they've gone through up there, and I will bring that information to the Ayers 11.
I have a corollary question. When you do your study and you determine there won't be any impacts to any active wells, take out 50 of them, I'm just obviously not cheaper. And then you construct it, and then a 30-gallon-per-minute well suddenly has gone dry. What is the mechanism for going back and getting that addressed if it isn't in the plan to begin with? You understand? Most EIRs say, well, there's no impact, or it's insignificant because it's only one house. That doesn't work for us. So I'm trying to understand what the mechanism is, and maybe you can tell us what the mechanism is when a well is ruined, a good well, to reinstate it. Like, do you say, well, you didn't tell us about it earlier, or we didn't think it would be a problem, now we don't believe you because it's because of the drought? I mean, that's a real concern in this community.
I think the best approach here would be for me to consult with my Central Valley counterpart and see how they're handling the well issue up there right now.
You can provide us an answer, a
And
written
get that
answer
back
to
to
that one
you
as well.
on August 11th.
Yeah, it all ties together.
I have one other.
You can't get back to us before August 11th.
One of our problems is we're down to myself.
I got a couple more here. Does the High Speed Rail Authority intend to use local District 37 water supplies in Acton for your construction, dust control activities, etc.? Are you going to use District 37 water?
Yes.
So we need to know that. Okay, so that's another important question for us.
Just, let's put that in context. District 37 pulls its water from the same aquifer, basically the Santa Clara River, that feeds many people, and then everyone's well feeds into ultimately. All water flows to Santa Clara River. So if we're having this problem with the Edison Tri-Attachment Renewables Transmission Project, they are watering the roads and using water for their cement from local areas. And if we do that here, with such a substantial project, we will further drive the water level, the water table down.
What hydrology studies specific to this area have been completed, and where is this information available?
The hydrology studies would be completed as part of the EIR.
The draft. Will we see them in the draft EIR?
Yes.
Any response to that? When boring through the blue line, and everybody knows what the blue line is,
They're FEMA marked flood zones, basically.
what measures are taken to avoid water and aquifer contamination, and how do you comply with the Clean Water Act in the process?
Tunnels are built around the world, and there are specific mechanisms that are used, including sophisticated tunnel liners to prevent the water from coming into the tunnel.
One question.
One of the key things that we would do in advance, though, would be a geotechnical investigation to understand where those locations were so that we could avoid them.
So no study thus far.
No, that is all part of the EIR-EIS.
Material removed by tunneling be placed.
And again, that study has not been completed. That is a very important, that's the way a large project moves forward. We don't have final design here. We're not starting construction. We're not starting construction in the next year or in the next 2 years. That design has to be done, those studies have to be done. Borrow material, borrow material and the placement of fill is a very critical and crucial component of the project. And one of the top level goals of the project will be to make it a net zero, right? To use all of the spoils that come out of a tunnel somewhere else on the project. That would be the primary goal of the design. And comprehensive and complicated studies go into how you can make it a net zero project.
So you just said no construction will start in 2015,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
Well, we have questions on that.
Well, I do. How will soil contamination be avoided? Again, the study. Is that what you're going to say to me?
Well, wait, no.
No, ma'am. Good job, Sorry, I apologize.
Let me rephrase the question.
Okay.
The high-speed rail authority has already certified EIRs.
But not you.
I appreciate that. However, in those EIRs, they have addressed what to do with the tailings or the, whatever you call it, the borings, what to do, how do you keep contaminating aquifers. So, we're asking what those measures are. That's what we'd like to hear.
There's no tunnels.
Say that again.
There are no tunnels in the current EIRs for Merced and Fresno and
No
Fresno to
answers.
Bakersfield. Those are at grade.
I thought you had some, what do you call them? Open, what do you call them, channels?
Trenches.
Trenches. So again, the goal of the project is to be net zero, and those are unique cases up there. Being a net zero project is unique to the project. That is always going to be the top goal. They have worked with the locals and with local regulations to determine where the spoils are appropriately put, right? Because there are only certain areas that can accept them. But that is unique to an individual project in terms of, because the location you would put a spoil is unique. In Fresno, you would be looking for a location up there.
Can you talk to us?
If there were spoils here, we would be looking, obviously, for a more local opportunity. But there are other local projects going on, and the hope always is that you can find a donor project.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, point being, Pam was pointing out that there's a tremendous amount of dirt, and waste, and rocks and everything coming out of the tunnels that will be necessary in this area. What Michelle is indicating is that each project is individual. That will be studied at this specific individual project level. Once a route is determined and they do the other studies, the objective is to make it a net zero project. So whatever amount that comes out is used on the project in some way, shape, and form, which may be quite difficult based on the amount of dirt that's coming out. But that is part of the EIR that hits our point here once the route is determined.
Diesel particles, NOx. Okay, got it. I'm not a scientist. Be mitigated. That was Jacki's question.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, I think that was, yeah. Okay, so air quality. We're all concerned about our community.
So there will be a dust mitigation program, and as part of our project, we have mandated low emissions construction vehicles. Of course, we're starting construction in the Central Valley. They are non-attainment. They have some of the poorest air quality in the country. And so part of the requirement of the project, to do work on the project, the contractor has to agree to buy the lowest emission vehicles possible. So those vehicles will be coming to California.
Are the boring machines also diesel?
Is the train?
The train is diesel also?
No, the train is electric.
No.
Yes.
We've been told for the first 8 years that it's diesel.
No,
it's electric.
It's steel electric. It's an electrified train.
Okay, well, let's get back to the diesel then. Engineers, that would be a question.
Some of them are now. We are, as Michelle talked about,
You have to speak up a little bit.
we're trying to initiate a program where the construction equipment is developed as more low emission type equipment.
This is one of the engineers on the project.
And my name's Rick Simon, regional engineer for the high-speed train program in Southern California. As Michelle said, we're trying to develop a program where construction equipment can be, we spec it out that it has to be more emission friendly, lower emission or zero emission. On the Central Valley projects, we're bringing these new equipment on to that project. The same type of equipment can be used down here in Southern California. So there will be motivation for the contractors to bring out more emission friendly equipment, not only for boring machines, but for graders and scrapers and anything else.
Concrete trucks,
Yes.
dump trucks,
Yes.
water trucks,
Yes.
everything that's in the construction process, sir, will be
Yes.
low emission.
We can send you our policy.
It's diesel, right?
Well, there's still,
Could be CNG too. We'll have to look
The
at-
majority-
Yeah, we'll have to look at what kind you're buying, but it will result in a low emissions construction fleet for every other project in California after.
how will noise impacts be mitigated during the construction?
They will be looked at as part of the EIS. I know, but the point is we don't actually know. Right now, we don't know which of these alignments is going to be the final alignment.
That's what we're
They
waiting
all
for.
need to be studied equally to determine which one has the fewest impacts to everybody up and down the alignment. And so when it's determined which of these lines have the fewest impact, then the sleeves get rolled up in terms of that particular alignment to dive even deeper to identify what's going on there and how some of these issues, like the construction issues, would be handled.
At what point, Michelle, will we know the route?
The route is decided part of the EIS process, and it is brought to the final EIS process. So it's part of the final It's probably about 2 years away.
Wait. Isn't the final EIR is coming out next year?
No, the draft is coming
No,
out.
it says.
No, it
final.
said 2015
And it said 2015 and beyond.
and beyond.
So, Michelle, during the EIR process, you will be studying these two routes and another route that goes through
Correct.
the
Correct.
slowing and all
And
of
then
that.
those are compared to one another.
And you will be doing an analysis on all three of those. From the analysis of that, you will determine, based on your findings and community input, which one the board feels is the best one. They will then put that in the final EIR
Correct.
and move on from there.
Correct.
So right now, we're still dealing with 3 routes through Acton, 2 and 1 that we have to define.
And one
And
through there,
what
or
all
maybe
impacts are
more.
that.
There could be more than one that's studied through that area as well.
So the point being in your scoping meetings and all that, and the basis of community input here is to raise your and the board's awareness of any and all impacts that will happen based on those specific routes.
Correct.
So the more community involvement and input you get, the better decision, hopefully, the board will be making.
Correct. So all of these are questions that I hope you will submit to us and provide at the scoping meeting to go into, and the reason, and I know you're down to your head on the wall, so that they are officially part of the legal record. That is crucial. That is how it works.
You haven't answered one question.
Just a second.
Sorry, we'll actually move through the process. Oftentimes, agencies and organizations file lawsuits in order to make sure that they have an opportunity to discuss and sit down talk through mitigation issues. So at this juncture, there are discussions on all of that.
Well, it's way beyond that, Michelle, but okay, I accept your answer. How is the High-Speed Rail Authority proceeding with the how many trains per hour is anticipated for the Burbank to Palmdale segment? We can't seem to find those answers on your website.
They're not in the 2014 business plan?
It's a really big document.
I know. So, the initial service is 2 trains an hour, 1 or 2 trains an hour, starting up in the 2020s, moving up. At this juncture, we have ridership estimates. Again, they're ridership estimates. So it moves up to 6 trains per hour in 2040 or so.
Hours of operation.
So
It is shut down at night between 12 and 5 or something like that for maintenance on the track.
okay. So is there an alignment through Acton that is preferred by the High-Speed Rail Authority at this point?
No. That's what this
And you
schedule is
just
about.
stated that there could even be more in your, what do you call that? The slug?
In the slug, yes.
The giant red dot is yellow.
Okay. Who will be implementing and writing the safety requirements for a train traveling in excess of 150 miles per hour?
We have technical experts on safety. They will have to comply. All of our trains will have to comply with the FRA regulations for high-speed train operation. Comprehensive plans will be written to address that.
Where will the emergency access points be for the above-ground section portions of the high-speed rail? And there are above ground on certain routes.
Again, that would be part of what we would determine as we move through the more comprehensive study.
If you're totally tunneling, how often do you have to have one of the air vents or the escape vents?
We're looking at that right now. There are tunnels, like for instance, the tunnel under the English Channel that does not have any vents. That just has a 3rd tunnel that carries the ventilation. There are even other schemes for tunnels across the world right now where there are twin tunnels and the tunnel uses the other tunnel for the ventilation. So there are a whole bunch of options here to look at as we look at the tunnel. It would be our preference to keep the tunnel in the tunnel. To not service, to not have a ventilation shaft.
Will security, fire, and paramedic staff be present in the construction area at all times?
That
We'll follow OSHA.
will follow the OSHA regulations.
Are they in there?
I don't,
The contractor will be required to follow all safety regulations.
What was it, the question? Will security, which would be police, fire, and paramedic staff be present during the construction and in the area at all times? And she said, we're going to follow OSHA. Do you know it? Correct? Is that what you said?
whatever it is requirements are.
Okay. Equipment trails be accessed and protected if these corridors are fenced.
That is an important component of what we're going to study. Those public trails there is a study in the EIR-EIS that looks at parks and recreation facilities, studies where they are, and documents basically how to preserve them.
Okay, let me throw in here. You need to look at more than just Parks and Rec, because we have in our CSD substantial trail dedications that aren't necessarily owned and controlled by Parks and Rec. And so there's a lot of dirt roads in this community, and they are a certain width, and part of that width is for horses, whether it's an absolute parks or not. So you need to expand that scope and not just consider Parks and Rec.
Okay. Which roads will be permanently closed by the various alignments, and how will new two-way evacuation routes be provided in these areas?
Again, that will be part of the study. There is a comprehensive traffic study that's done as part of any of these projects. Part of that also is an emergency access and egress study. When you look at roads and you look at road closures, if there is a reason to close a road, and I don't know, frankly, that there would be a road that would be closed, access is very important to people. Access is very important to people, and so we go out of our way to maintain access. And closures would have to be evaluated with a variety of county emergency folks to make sure that it would be appropriate and it wouldn't create an island.
Access. Every house in Acton has to have 2 ways to get in and out. The fire department.
Correct.
So we need
And that's the island issue. Because emergency services don't want one way in. They need 2 ways in to any location. So all of that will be evaluated.
Because we were told that this causeway, they closed the area. I mean, it was shut down. The whole area. Is that not true? The whole area of what? For the above ground sections, the causeway, whatever you want to call it, will be fenced for its entire length that it's above ground.
Correct, but that doesn't mean that a road isn't going under it.
Some of these roads are in the blue line. I mean, just
No, it's a single. Again, these are all of the things that we need to look at as we look at these alignments to make sure that we find the one that has all of the best attributes.
When will the DEIR be issued?
The draft EIS would come out sometime in late spring or summer of next year, 2015.
Not this fall, not this winter.
Correct.
How long will it be available for review?
When will the draft EIR be issued?
And the answer
What was
is,
the last question again, please?
When will the draft EIR be issued?
and the answer is,
Next spring or summer?
And how long will it be available for review?
There is a mandatory review period of 45 days, I believe.
Okay, and the FER? Do we need that? Okay. Condemnation process for this segment, which would include eminent domain.
So we follow the state law in terms of eminent domain. All of that includes evaluations of the property and offers on the property. It involves your ability to bring a counteroffer and get a counter evaluation of your property that you submit back. It is a legal process. There is a legally mandated requirement of give and take. You are actually paid for that appraisal if you so choose to have an appraisal. If you do not believe that the state's appraisal is appropriate for you, the state will support your going out and getting your own appraisal and bringing it back to the table. It is a process that we can provide an extensive fact sheet on so you can see all of the details of it. And it would not start until we have a preferred alignment. Because we would not, for any reason, go start buying properties on all of these alignments until we get to the single one.
Okay, but we understand that there's legislation, at least I researched this a little bit, that there's legislation before Congress that they're going to change some of the rules for eminent domain and how it will be handled for this project. Are you aware of that?
At this point, we have the legal mandate. We were granted it by the State Board of Public Works.
Aircraft Canyon area. I just have a real simple question. The color of the lines on the map of the underground or above ground, which is which? Which screen is that?
Repeat that, we can all get it.
Yeah. She wanted to know the color on the map of the lines, what is underground, what is above ground.
What does it mean? I thought it would be helpful to know that.
So in,
So we know which is above
Okay,
ground.
go ahead, Michelle.
so in this particular alignment, purple is a tunnel, green grass is at grade, and blue is a bridge. So all of this area here that's purple would be tunnels. Here, all this green area here would be basically the train at grade or on the surface. All of this area here in the blue would be the train essentially on a bridge.
That's available on your website?
Yes.
Right now,
Jacki from Red Rover Lion Canyon. Jacki gave a wonderful presentation, but I noticed you mentioned that wells would be impacted in that area. It's my understanding there is also a large viaduct that is to go over there and many homes that are to be taken out, as well as a lot of echoing noise that would propagate through the canyon. So I want to know if that's still in place.
On the above ground section.
These are the two alignments. These alignments, these traditional SR14 alignments, are fairly similar to the alignments that we've been discussing that do have those impacts. That is where the other alignment option comes in for a study, because it would have different impacts. It may minimize the impacts. That's what we want to look at.
But the hybrid would still involve the twin tunnels and the viaduct. Thank you.
Okay, good. Lady in the back, you got
Acton Canyon Road, 34530 Acton Canyon Road. It is literally going through my backyard. I'm in a major remodel. Major. I'm down to studs. Do I continue doing it, or do I continue doing the improvement? I don't know.
well,
But you're showing me a route in purple. That means nothing to me.
That's a tunnel.
Why do you not have something set up that shows exactly where the route is going, street names, neighborhoods, so that people know?
if I may,
Satellite images do
Understand.
nothing for me.
you're my neighbor, very close. They have had maps displayed here at several meetings,
I have
which,
seen that.
which I've actually figured out where I live and where the tunnels and
I
things are
have
going.
seen that.
And it will, those will have some asset, but that is what we're looking at here, why we have it back. Those initial two routes had major impact above and below ground on multiple properties, schools, all sorts of things. So that's why we're coming back, she's coming back with some other alternatives to look
You
at.
did not answer my question.
But you have to keep aware.
Where is the map showing exactly where this is possible going?
You may.
We're going to have a meeting.
Hold on, please.
I'd like to respond to that. We do have a map, but they were not provided to us by the High Speed Rail Authority.
Why?
Wait, can I take this?
Okay, now we can't hear anything.
So Kim and Pam have spent a lot of time taking the routes that you're seeing up here and putting them on maps, Acton maps, so you can see roads. And we have some of them here. We've had them at several meetings, so I'm sorry, if you weren't able to see them, because we usually have them in the back. But at our next meeting, you can look at them there, and you will see.
Well, hold on. I have them at my office. If you would call, I'm happy to show them to any individual that's willing to come to my office. They're
I
there.
have seen them at your office,
Yes.
and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay,
We will have another meeting.
okay. Gentlemen in the back.
Sorry.
I have one very important question. Who ultimately says this is going to happen or this is not
Jerry
going to
Brown.
happen?
Get rid of him.
Get rid of him.
Who makes the decision?
The High Speed Rail Authority was founded by statute in 1996.
Who makes the
and
decision?
Ultimately, it's the High Speed Rail Authority.
Who is that?
We have 9 board members. Their information is available on our website. They have monthly meetings. They have public comment.
Are they elected or are they appointed?
They're appointed.
By whom?
They are appointed by the governor, by the speaker,
What?
Okay, we gotta let her finish, Bruce.
and by the leaders of both the state assembly and senate.
Follow-up question. What, if any, impact does our feedback have, other than they listen? Do we have any power? Any authority?
Under the NEPA and CEQA process, you actually have significant power. You have both the power of comment, and which, oh my gosh, and you also have legal recourse.
Okay.
Do we have the power to
What,
stop
we're
it?
to sue the president?
Okay,
Bruce,
next
you've got
question.
other people, I'm sorry, we gotta keep
Okay,
moving.
go ahead.
I really want to know who is paying for this. There is another state in our whole country who is doing such an insane thing as this incredibly stupid. Are we paying right now through our taxes? In what form? What is the title that this goes under? Transportation? What is it?
Yeah, this is a transportation. Actually, interestingly enough, the state of Texas and the state of Florida are also planning high-speed rail projects right now. They have them in significant planning, advanced planning to link some of their major metropolitan areas together. So California is not the only state that is planning high-speed rail right now.
Okay, so what if I don't want to pay for this?
Yeah.
I don't want to. I'm not interested in it. It's going to impact me, my wonderful town. I don't want this here. I don't want it. There are a lot of us who have big animals in this area, and we love it for that reason that we can have them. And you're going to destroy all of it.
Yeah.
I don't want
The
it.
only real impact we have as citizens of this country is to take back the government from the legislature. Blind people filling their pockets and their relatives' pockets with this and many other projects. Until they're replaced, all we can do is come to meetings like this. This is a good turnout. We've had many meetings. We've never had this before in the last several years. If you're here, stay involved. State your position. Drive Michelle crazy in a nice way. And try to get this thing out of Acton. But in reality, they've shifted money from cap and trade they're trying to do, which is questionably legal in many respects. But the taxes you and I pay are funding all this nonsense. And until someone changes what they're doing in Sacramento and in Washington, we're still going to be the subjects of the overall governing class. That's the reality.
My name is Sandy Madsen, and I've lived in Acton for 24 years, and we are on 2 of those routes, our property, with a well, etc. My husband and I are not exactly young. We are thinking that we are going to sell our property one of these times and you know, do something else with not having all that land. And who is going to want to buy a property that is possibly on a route that is not going to be decided for who knows how long? And what are we supposed to do? Just kind of sit and twiddle our thumbs? I mean, I don't want this at all. I don't want it at all. I see no reason for it. I appreciate the work that all of you have done, but I still see no reason. The second thing I want to say is that as a community, we have come together in the past, and we have made our voice heard. And I think that that's important for us to do. So we need to have a plan of action. And that's another meeting, that's not this meeting, but we need to have a plan of action for our community, I think. So stay involved. The meeting at the library will never hold all these people, so you might want to look at that, and thank you.
Pam, you want to mention the meeting next week, planning meeting to get people involved in this? I don't know.
Pick a
We're
date.
having a meeting, so you guys want to
Why here, not the 5? Why here, not the 5?
There need to be a lot of them, and they need to be detailed and specific. So Pam and Kim are talking about how do we as a community come together and make sure that we have everybody commenting. We were talking about having a meeting to put those comments together, or to give you templates to use, if you would like that. If you are interested in doing that, please make sure your email address is there, and we will, as soon as that meeting is set up, we will email all of you, and if you can't come to the meeting, we can send you templates, whatever format you guys have used in the past, is what we'll do, so.
Okay.
45 days is the
One over here.
My name is Cari McLane, and I've lived in this community for 20 years. I am with Sandy. We do not want this. Now, I understand, and I need you to answer me that nobody along this line is going to be able to get on it. There are no stops, am I correct?
Right.
Okay, so
Station in Palmdale, station in Burbank.
my question to you is, what is the point?
Yeah.
What is the point and who's going to ride this train?
Yep.
Where are you going to get your ridership from? And along with that, how much is it going to cost to ride the train?
So
Let her answer.
if you pull a list of the top 10 largest cities in the state of California, 8 of those 10 cities have a station. And the
I don't care about that. I
That's not
want an
the
answer
answer.
to the question.
And the population is close to 9 million people in those cities.
Quiet, guys. Let's see if she can answer a question.
Which is the equivalent of the 12th largest state in the country. So there are a substantial number of people in the state of California. I think you know there are 38 million people right now. We anticipate that there will be 50 million people in the state of California by 2050. If you built roads and airports to accommodate those people, to accommodate and maintain the current level of traffic that we have right now, it would be close to $150 billion.
You didn't answer
Okay,
my
you didn't answer
question.
my question. Who's going to ride the train? How much is it going to cost? Those are real simple questions.
The people in the state of California are going to ride the train.
Who's going to get on in Burbank to ride to Palmdale? When it doesn't stop at Acton, we have a metro link that does all of this. Who's going to do it and why?
60,000 people in Palmdale go down the hill every day for work, but not to Burbank.
They don't go to Burbank. They go to Los Angeles.
Okay, let's try to get control here a little bit.
Hold on.
Hello? Okay, can we all agree on one thing? Is there anybody in this room that thinks that high-speed rail is logical, needed, necessary, or rational? No! Okay, now that's out of the way. Okay? Some of these questions here deal with that concept. The main reason Michelle is here today is because you've got a bureaucracy run amok. They're running ahead no matter what. They're getting paid. They're lining deeper pockets. Not Michelle. She's a worker bee in this who's trying to do her job the best she can in all respects that she can. Our primary thing is to find out how we can get this boondoggle out of Acton.
Yes.
And please try to address your questions to that, not to whether it's a good or bad idea. We all agree it's a bad idea. We all agree it's a bad idea. Not all of you know, stand up and say so.
I'm a little bit confused about the routes. You've got those routes, and then you've got your slug route. I've got confused about the routes. You've got those routes that are shown up there, and then you've got the slug route, which Jacki has said is not really vitally constitutional, correct?
My understanding.
So my question is, you're talking about we only have those 3 options. If none of those are feasible, will Michael autonomous vision, will that be addressed? Will that be an option? Because that sounds like it takes it out of Acton, the population of Acton.
So
why is that not being considered?
So right now we are moving forward with looking for lines within that area.
But my understanding is that line is not in that area. The one
Okay,
that
let me ask a question here. In your slug area, is there a geographical area in that slug area that is totally outside of Acton?
I cannot answer.
Okay, that would be the question, because that's what we want to try to get
But
to.
I'm sure Jacki can.
I have, this map is gross.
right? By gross, I mean there's no fine detail. I don't mean it's
Yes.
I have done my best to take, there are certain geographic features like the train route where it kicks out, and put it onto a map where Acton's boundaries are. And if they actually brought this over just to here, and went into the forest, because the forest starts like right just off the map, or actually just outside your slug, then you'd be in the forest immediately. Now, I showed a map of where Acton residences occur in the forest, because there are in-holdings, and a lot of people here live in those in-holdings, and you could avoid those completely and not have well impacts, and you could avoid noise impacts to them by outside the residential areas, in the forest, you remain underground. So to answer your question, Antonovich's vision, what I understand is only he can tell us what it is. I don't know. But what I have read from his letters and seen in the newspaper articles is his vision is just to the east of that yellow stuff.
So will that,
First question, where are you going to get the water for this project when California is in the worst drought in history?
That will be determined as part of the construction staging plan.
So you have no idea where you're going to get the water from, right?
Which we asked her if it was coming from District 37 or where.
No, so nobody knows, nobody's made any plans for that yet. There is no water. We are in a serious drought.
Yes.
All right, keep that in mind when we're thinking of this insane train from hell.
Second question.
Second question. What kind of impact on the environment will there be when you have to dig up over 7 miles of a major highway to connect myself and all my neighbors to city water when you totally destroy all our wells? When there's nothing left to dig out of the ground, and we have to hook up to city water. We are over 7 miles from the major line of city water in Acton. I live on Ranchitos Road, almost to Agua Dulce, way back in the canyon. And most of Acton is not on city water.
I know, yeah, I know.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, we know that.
So
We know that
what's
it's
the
a complex
answer?
issue.
What's going to happen when you have to tear out Escondido Canyon, which is a major highway, to put in a city water line to get to my house? Now you got to stop the traffic. That's a major thoroughfare through this whole community. And God help us if there's a fire or an emergency. There's nowhere to go except jump up on Sierra, and I hope you can get through up there.
And again, once they determine, these things need to be brought up by you, the community, by the citizens, to the High-Speed Rail Authority, talking to Supervisor Antonovich. You have to write letters, you have to make phone calls, you have to stay involved. Once they determine where they're going, you can't lay back and take your time off then. You have to still stay involved, because if they decide to go that route, that's when they'll make that decision, what they have to do, when they'll block it off and all this. But they can't just say, oh, well, we'll do this over here, because they don't know where they're going yet. Anyway, we have Supervisor Antonovich's deputy. Kathleen, you want to introduce you?
Yes, this is Supervisor Antonovich's Transportation Deputy, Michael Cano. Maybe he could give us
I appreciate the chance to be here, and I do appreciate Michelle for coming up here and facing the firing squad in a sense. I mean, she's got a difficult job, and she does her best to try to provide information. So please continue to work with her. The anger you're expressing, and we've heard it, expressed it, very aware of this issue. Norm Pique in the back here has been meeting after meeting after meeting. After every meeting, we talk about what the impact is on Acton, what the issues are. This different alignment is, the genesis of it is from the original routes through Acton. We had different meetings at the library, we worked with the school district, we worked with different community members on how those two alignments, as best as the High-Speed Rail Authority has tried to put the needle, the thread to the needle, there are still impacts. So the supervisor's intent here is to try to not just take care of Santa Clarita and other areas, but Acton was a prime genesis for this. So we would like to see this subject area expand enough to include a non-impact to Acton if possible. I mean, obviously, we know Acton. We recognize that Acton is situated between Palmdale, and Los Angeles. So we have to figure out a way to do this. This may not be the map we want to see here. We want to see a larger map, but we also do have to say, for their own credibility of the environmental document, you will have to look at different routes that maybe aren't going to Acton through different parts. So we're going to try to figure out how to mitigate that or push it out as much as we can. But this slug here, we personally like to see a little larger. And we'll work with Michelle on that as well for the next meeting. But please continue to voice your issues. If you get involved in the process, but there's a legal ramification, if you're able to get your comments in, then we have the ability to take recourse. You can also continue to inform us. Norm here is diligent in going to every meeting possible. When we go to talk to you, I come up as often as I can. I've been to at least half a dozen meetings up in this area the last 5-6 years. So we'll continue to work with you.